Kyle Klingman with Track Wrestling. We have a three-time world team member. She was a bronze medalist at the 2003 World Championships. Now she is a doctor practicing in California. Jenny Wong, great to have you with us.
Hey, Kyle. Thanks for having me.
Well, I just watched this match of yours from 2004. Your birthday was on June 1, and I'm assuming you watched the match. What was it like reliving some of those moments from 2004?
It was crazy. That was a whole different lifetime ago, it seems like. But it was nice that to go back in time and look at where I was before. I didn't remember a whole bunch about that match actually. I just remember my shoulder was injured and it was a little unstable and I was trying to protect it, and then I just remember it was really close. But it was fun to look back at some of those scrambles.
Do you break it down and say I would have done things differently in that match?
Oh yeah, I was I was totally judging myself. I was like, oh man, I let her have the head position. She had her head here the whole time, and I couldn't get her out of that pocket. I should have moved her around a little bit more, but I squeaked it out. So I guess I can't complain too much. But yeah, there's a few things that I could have done better.
You got a bronze medal at the 2003 World Championships, which was in New York. My recollection is you tied Japan and then they won on a tiebreaker. You got a medal there. One of the all-time great American women's teams. What was it like being part of that in the United States, where you guys just really had a performance of a lifetime in some ways and had a really solid performance?
That was pretty amazing. It actually had a special significance for us because if you remember, in 2001, we were supposed to have the World Championships in New York that year. But then, of course, 9/11 happened. I remember when that happened, I was sitting in my class in college, and I was getting ready to fly out to the World Team Training Camp. I wasn't on the team that year, but I was on the national team. So I was getting ready to fly out to the World Team Training Camp in Colorado Springs the next day. And then we're hearing about all this destruction and loss of life in New York, and the whole country was just in shock. And then fast forward 2 years, I think it was France that was supposed to have it that year. But as a kindness, they allowed us to have it in New York that year. And so that was really special for us to be able to represent our country in New York, to show how strong we were. And then we also visited 9/11, or sorry, the site where 9/11 happened, the World Trade Center. And we had a few quiet moments there, just kind of reflecting. And then going into the tournament, we were just, super excited to represent.
Do you consider yourself a women's pioneer in wrestling?
I actually don't consider myself a pioneer. There were like Lauren Lamb, who I had that match against. She was one of the pioneers in my consideration. Trish Saunders, she was one of my biggest role models coming up. You had Afsoon and all those girls in that generation. So I definitely was able to do what I did because of those people before me.
What was that like coming up with women's wrestling? Did you feel like it was accepted at some level and other people didn't? Where were you at that level when you first started out?
Actually, when I first started out, there still was a lot of resistance. There was a lot of wrestling rooms that I didn't feel welcome in. There was a couple of rooms where, I felt especially unwelcome in. I'm a little shy to start with, but going into those rooms, that I was even more. It was kind of difficult. Some of the rooms that I had to go into. But I wanted to get better at wrestling, and I believed in my right to be there. And I would tell myself, as long as I'm there for the right reasons, I deserve to be here. If I'm working hard and trying to get better, then it's absolutely my right to be there. So that's kind of what gave me the strength to keep going in every day, even though I knew that I wasn't welcome. Later on, things started getting a little better. When the women's got into the Olympics, it was a little bit more established, a little bit more respected. then things got a little bit easier, but there was a lot of times where it was difficult.
What drew you into wrestling initially?
Mm, So it was weird. I just I tried lots of sports as a kid. Tennis, softball, soccer, gymnastics, swimming, and I didn't really stick with any of those. I was a little ADD, so I couldn't really pay attention. I didn't have a sustained attention span for soccer. I'd be like picking flowers and doing cartwheels, and the ball would go by. Um, and then, nothing really got me super excited. And I actually thought that I was really bad at sports. I thought I was not athletic. And then I heard the guys talking in math class in ninth grade, and they're talking about wrestling. And I was like, that sounds like fun. And then I got in my head to try it. And my parents were a little apprehensive because it's, not every day that your ninth grade daughter comes to you and says she wants to wrestle on the boys wrestling team when she's never had any even thought of that before. But they let me do it, and I tried it, and I loved it, and I was terrible at it for the first few years, but kept growing, and it turned out to be the best decision probably of my life, because it's really made me who I am.
So even though you had some resistance, were there some people that were your advocate and helped you through that journey?
Um, well, my parents were supportive of me, as long as I kept working hard and kept my grades up, of course. There was one other girl on the team when I started, and I drew some strength from her. My coaches were a little uncertain, about my reasons for being there. So they were cautiously supportive, but then towards the end, I feel like they were extremely supportive. And then also, my team, certain members never thought that I belonged there, but then certain members, eventually came around and then also became very supportive.
What's that mental battle like to just keep going into it day after day after day and not giving up hope?
Um, just the drive to get better, that was my motivation. I knew that a lot of people didn't, think girls should be wrestling boys, didn't think girls should be wrestling. But I kind of pushed that aside. When you're in the wrestling room, you're trying to get better at your technique, you're trying to get the takedown, you're trying to get your conditioning better. There's a lot of other stuff to focus on other than the fact that people, that's their thing. My thing is I want to get better.
When did you know you wanted to continue with this and go international and make world teams and knew that was a viable option?
Um, I don't know that, like, coming out of high school, I don't know that I thought that I would be able to do those things. I just kind of kept going, and then the next step was this, and then the next step was this, and then I'm wrestling in world team trials, and then I'm making national team. So it's just focusing on the small things. So I wasn't thinking about world championships or Olympics, at that time, but just making the small steps and just gradual progression.
Who on the women's team did you connect with right away?
Uh, I'd say Sarah McMahon. Yeah, I met her. See, we were in Romania. It was 1999, and I just bonded with her. She's a little bit of a mother figure in some ways, very caring, and she kind of took me under her wing, and then we just definitely bonded and have been friends ever since.
And thinking about that 2003 World Championship team, did you guys have discussions about how close it was and that it was a tie and that what could have happened to get that additional point?
Honestly, we didn't. We just kept moving forward. And the next month we had the World Cup in Japan, and we actually beat Japan in the finals. So that was amazing. As you know, Japan, they love their women's wrestling. They have a huge fan base, and they've been the top, and they're still at the top or around the top, this whole time. And we ended up in the finals with Japan, and it was very close back and forth, and it came down to our final match, and we were able to win that with Takara Montgomery was able to beat their wrestler. And so going head to head as a team, as a dual team, and winning against Japan, huge honor. And also I'm very proud of how our team came together to get that done that day.
What was that celebration like and that feeling after you won the World Cup?
That was crazy. Throughout the whole match, that arena was just electric. You heard everyone yelling and screaming, and then after we won, it was kind of quiet, because no one was expecting us to win. And Terry Steiner, the national team coach, Olympic coach, I've never seen him grin so big. He had this big smile just plastered on his face. That was an awesome night, and I'd never forget it.
Is that the pinnacle? Would you say that's the highlight moment of your wrestling?
It might have been. It was just super awesome to, represent our country, and as I don't know if you saw, I had a post on Facebook recently, about diversity and how that team, we were the most diverse team that you could be, and I was super proud of that too. So yeah, that was if not the top or one of my favorite memories. Yeah.
And then you are a doctor. You're a doctor of sports medicine. When did that start? When did that seed get planted that that's the direction you wanted to go in your life?
Well, actually, one of my mentors is BJ Anderson. He's been one of the team docs, helping out USA Wrestling for years. He actually treated my first ringworm, if that tells you anything. So he told me, a couple years ago that I had told him when I was in high school that I wanted to do what he did. And I don't even remember that, but that kind of blew me away. So I must have been thinking of that a long time ago, but going through med school, I was really drawn to emergency medicine, like an ER doctor. The excitement, everything's a little different. It's good for my ADD. But going through ER, I didn't really, I'm thankful for the education. I like learning how to deal with a little bit of everything, but I didn't really connect with it, the hours, and then you don't get to see patients get better really. There's a lot of personalities involved dealing with emergency medicine. And then, so I was thinking about doing a fellowship, and from emergency medicine, you can go into a sports medicine fellowship, and that seemed like the perfect fit for me. And indeed, it really has been. I get a lot of satisfaction from keeping people active. I know how much being able to use my body, being able to stay active means to me. And so I'm super grateful to be able to help people do the same thing, and not even just perform at, a high level sports, but also to just function in their daily life, to be able to pick their grandkids up, or to be able to go out and do some gardening, to be able to go grocery shopping. I get a lot of satisfaction from that. So I think I made the right decision.
What makes wrestling or combat sports different than other sports and how you treat them?
As far as the athletes?
Yeah, as far as the athletes and what challenges it presents that might be different than football or swimming or any other sport.
Well, it's just there's different injuries that they tend to get. But with any athletes, I know that I can't just be like, you need to sit 2 weeks out and not do anything, because I know they're not gonna. I knew that I didn't do that. I wouldn't do that. So I know that I have to give them something, So it's really helpful that I, have some knowledge about wrestling and martial arts. So say I had someone who had, a sprain of their AC joint, and I'll tell them, you can drill hard, you can take your partners down, but have them not take you down, and then maybe don't be defending parterre, because that's going to jam up that area. And then you can run, and then you can do these certain lifts, And then, they're a lot happier because they were expecting to be told you need to rest completely for 2 weeks. And having been an athlete, I know it's not good to completely rest for 2 weeks. And also, they're not going to be happy. They're going to be wanting to do something, because the hardest part of being an injured athlete is, that helpless feeling. Everyone's getting better, but you can't do anything. So you have to give them something. And I think that is the biggest thing in dealing with athletes.
How do you deal then with athletes, like you said, because they probably think they know more about their bodies and what they need to recover? How do you deal with that part of sports medicine where they get impatient?
Well, just letting them know that, certain things take a certain amount of time to heal. And also, I always fear this as a wrestler. If they don't take some time to let this heal and, maybe work on some other things, then they're going to be out for a longer time. So sometimes I have to scare them a little bit, let them know how serious it is and how important it is, give them a little foresight into the future, like you're in high school right now. You have this time, you have this season to take some time. You have a little time now, but if you don't let this heal, this could affect your college career or even later on. So that's
How tough was medical school to get through that and the challenges you had to face there?
Nothing was as tough as wrestling.
Really? Why is
Yeah.
that? That's fascinating.
Oh, well, those wrestling practices where they're just kicking your ass, conditioning the crap out of you, and everything in you is telling you to stop running so hard, or telling you to come out of your stance or whatever. Resisting that, that was probably like the hardest thing. And then medical school, that was, a grind, but in a different way. But nothing was as painful as those wrestling practices. So wrestling kind of made me a lot tougher to be able to get through medical school and just keep pushing on, even when I didn't feel like sitting there for 10 hours, with a book in front of me. And plus, I could eat and drink whatever I wanted.
That's true. So would you draw on that as you were going through medical school, thinking back to those moments?
Yeah. It's like, I can eat and I can drink, and I'm sitting here on a comfortable chair. This is way better than than some of the things that I've been through. So
Is it fun to see how far women's wrestling has come?
it really has. I'm super excited, and we have a lot of really great personalities out there right now. Really good role models, and flow wrestling and track wrestling. You guys are giving great coverage. More coverage than we used to have. And these girls, they're getting tougher and tougher, so they deserve it. And I'm so glad that everyone else is starting to get excited, about women's wrestling too.
What's the next step of what needs to happen? It feels like we're kind of right in the middle of it, but what other things do you think need to happen before we really get full-fledged and have women's wrestling in the rightful place in wrestling right now?
Well, I think they're progressing with it, but getting it sanctioned in every state. They've made great strides in that. Wrestle Like a Girl, Sally Roberts, and that crew. They've been instrumental in pushing forth the agenda, and it's actually, just been sanctioned in Florida, I believe.
Yep.
And yeah, so every new state that we gain is a win, and there's been a lot of progress. But we're still not to where we are with men's wrestling. But just like everything else, steady progress.
I know you're in jiu-jitsu, and it's always amazing when you transition from wrestling to jiu-jitsu and the submissions and how that interacts. Is it hard to go to that and to figure out submissions and what you can and can't do in a similar sport but different in the execution?
Um, there's a transition period, trying to get the things that I do in wrestling that are bad habits, like diving in for shots. I have to be a little more selective now. But on the whole, wrestlers definitely have a big advantage going in, body awareness, ability to pick up techniques, and our positional sense and ability to put pressure on people. Um, so that had been really helpful. I'm actually super excited about jujitsu because it's a whole new challenge. So it's not quite as intense as wrestling is because nothing is as intense as wrestling is, but there's a whole lot more techniques because they go from a lot more positions. And so I'm super excited to go to practice every day, just to learn, get more techniques in my tool belt, so to speak, and get better. It's kind of lit a fire under my butt. I really like jiu-jitsu.
Do you get involved with the high school wrestling scene in California? Because women's wrestling is really big there. Do you get involved there?
I haven't as much. A lot of my spare time is spent at jiu-jitsu. I help out with USA Wrestling a little bit, and but as far as covering high school teams, I haven't done that as much.
Do people identify you as a wrestler where you live?
Um, I mean, all my coworkers and all my jujitsu people know, but I don't know that it's widespread knowledge among the people in the city.
Yeah, but your coworkers do, and they clearly know that you have a background in wrestling.
Yep, they do. Yep.
That's got to be fun to be able to have that background, though, to speak to it. Because I would think in your profession, as we talk about just the sports medicine part, it's got to really give you an empathy and an understanding of what athletes are going through.
Yeah, and I think that's been really helpful in connecting with the athletes that I take care of and having them buy in. Them knowing that I understand what they're going through, that I don't want to just hold them out just to hold them out, but that, we're doing this for a certain reason. Sometimes the college athletes are the hardest to get them to back down, but if I tell them I've been there and I know it's frustrating, but we have to do this for this reason, that's been really helpful. Yeah.
What was the moment going back to your wrestling career that you kind of knew that this was going to be the sport for you? I know you just said that, hey, it was hard to enter in, but there had to have been a moment where you just locked in and said, hey, I'm in this all the way.
I don't know that there was a specific moment. I just remember being really bad at it, but just having the drive to be better at it. I love the physicality of it, and I love that I could see the progress. I was putting hard work in, and then I was getting results out. So I don't know that there is any one particular moment. It's just slow and steady, and just it's like I didn't have these big huge goals. I just kept moving forward and kept growing. So that was my main thing, just gradual growth.